Tim Moore is an American singer and songwriter who recorded 5 albums for David Geffen's Asylum record label. A self-taught musician, Moore grew up in Philadelphia where he went to art school and began to play his self-penned songs at local coffee houses. His rock career began as guitarist-singer with DC and the Senators, a cover band opening Philadelphia arena rock shows. Producing more and more songs during this time, he and a friend, Jeff Scott, formed the Muffins, the first group to perform and record more originals, many of which Scott wrote lyrics for. The Muffins had minor U.S. success on RCA Records with a Kinks-influenced single, Subway Traveler, produced by Cameo Parkway founder Bernie Lowe. The Muffins peaked in the Summer of Love, opening for Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground for a week at Philadelphia's Trauma Psychedelic Club. After the Muffins disbanded, Frank Zappa heard Moore's songs, which he found harmonically advanced for the period, and brought him to New York with the intention of signing him to Bizarre Records. Moore declined the signing when tour scheduling kept Zappa from producing the album himself. Moore returned to Philadelphia and worked as a staff writer and session guitarist on sessions with Tom Bell, Gamble, and Huff and other Philly soul producers. During this time, Moore lived next door to Daryl Hall in downtown Philadelphia where they both pulled salaries as staff writers. Hall and Moore co-wrote material for a band they founded, Gulliver, which released one album on the Elektra Records label. After the breakup of Gulliver, Moore moved to Woodstock, New York, then the hometown of Bob Dylan, the band, and Van Morrison, seeking a more personal approach to his music. He struck a deal with ABC Dunhill Records that produced the first Moore single, A Fool Like You, on which Donald Fagen sang backup. Moore teamed with producer Nick Jameson to record his first solo album, Tim Moore, which was released on Gulf Western's famous music subsidiary label, a small record company. For the first time, Moore assembled his own tracks as a multi-instrumentalist, layering guitar, keyboard and bass parts over drum tracks by Bernard Purdie and Russ Kunkel. 3 singles, A Fool Like You, Second Avenue and When You Close Your Eyes, received much airplay in the US and UK. But as Second Avenue was headed up the US charts, the album's distributor, Paramount, abruptly ceased record operations. Because his single was already climbing the charts, the sudden release from contract spurred a Tim Moore bidding war between Clive Davis and David Geffen. By the time the deal went to Geffen, Art Garfunkel had released a competing version of Second Avenue which peaked at number 34 on the Billboard Hot 100. The following year he released Behind the Eyes, featuring what remains his best-known song in the US, rock and roll, Love Letter, a hit for the Bay City Rollers a year later. Moore's guitar work on Rock and Roll Love Letter drew the attention of Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards. The two became friends and Moore spent 2 weeks guesting on guitar with the Stones and Peter Tosh during their rehearsals at Beyersville Studios. Although Moore was signed to Los Angeles-based Asylum Records, he didn't record in LA. This more highly polished collection teamed Moore with Michael McDonald, David Foster, the Eagles' Timothy B. The band he assembled for the American tour in support of White Shadows featured Brian Wilson's bassist, Bob Litzik, Philadelphia drummer Steve Shive, Pittsburgh drummer Bennett Carlos, David Livingston on guitar and a Bob Litzik compadre from Chicago, John Melnick on keyboards. Litzik and drummer Steve Shive were featured players on his next album, High Contrast on Asylum Records, produced by legendary producer/engineer, Ken Scott, who previously had produced albums by David Bowie, Supertramp, Dixie Dregs, Stanley Clarke, and was the second engineer to Jeff Emerick on the Beatles' White Album. Other acts continued to mine his new releases for songs, but neither of these achievements brought more wider public attention in his homeland. Instead, he found success outside the US while promoting his 5th album, Flash Forward, produced by Blondie engineer, Rob Freeman. In 1986 Moore spent 75 days touring Brazil after his romantic beat ballad Yes from Flash Forward went to number 1 and held that position for 10 weeks. Performers who have recorded Moore's songs include Art Garfunkel, Second Avenue, Cher, Love Enough, Richie Havens, That's the Way I See You /Yes/It and T Over Till It's Over, Bay City Rollers, Rock and Roll Love Letter, Etta James, Charmer, The Records, another version of Rock and Roll Love Letter, Maxine Nightingale, I Think I Want to Possess You, Ian Matthews, A Fool Like You, Colin Blunstone, I Can Almost See the Light, When You Close Your Eyes, Second Avenue, Eric Anderson, A Fool Like You, Cliff Richard, Love Enough, Clifford T.